What was the thought process behind it when you talked to a doctor about this? What did they tell you was wrong with you?
They told me I was bipolar. And I remember going on TMZ and saying, slavery is a choice.
Everything about Kanye West, once hailed as a groundbreaking visionary, feels like it's been turned completely upside down. How did one of music's most innovative figures transform into such a whirlwind of erratic statements, baffling alliances, and public meltdowns? For years, he used his insecurities as a driving force behind brilliant, culture-shifting creations. Now, each headline seems more explosive than the last, and fans are left wondering, where did the old Kanye go, and is there any chance we'll ever see him again? But that's only the beginning. This isn't just a tale of lost artistry. It's a story about the lengths someone will go for attention, how addiction to the spotlight can overshadow even the greatest accomplishments, and why some of the industry's biggest names have found themselves in his crosshairs.
Ye just called out Kendrick Lamar for being on Playboi Carti's album. Last night, Carti released his highly anticipated album, Music, which featured Kendrick Lamar on 3 separate tracks.
Stick around, because by the end of this, you may see Kanye West, and the empire he once built, in a completely different light. In the early 2000s, Kanye West emerged as a breath of fresh air in hip-hop. He wasn't the stereotypical rapper with a gritty past. Instead, he was a middle-class kid from Chicago with a knack for sampling soul music, weaving it into catchy, heartfelt beats that resonated across the board. When he dropped The College Dropout, he didn't just release an album, he sparked an entire movement. Songs like All Falls Down tackled self-consciousness and materialism in a way that felt deeply personal and universal at the same time. And back then, it was easy to root for Kanye.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler. This is the future president you're talking to right now. I love Jewish people, but I also love Nazis.
He looked like the underdog, fighting for studio time, producing tracks for big names, and eventually strong-arming his way into getting noticed as a rapper himself. Behind it all, he wore his heart on his sleeve, unafraid to admit vulnerabilities, champion real issues, and speak from a place of raw honesty. Even as the accolades poured in, Kanye seemed to hold on to the very insecurities that made his music compelling. His humility and bravado lived side by side, creating a fascinating blend of relatability and spectacle. Fans felt connected to him on a deeper level. He was talented, flawed, unpolished at times, but always trying to push boundaries.
Kim Kardashian West is jumping to the defense of her husband Kanye West after admitting publicly in a series of posts on Instagram that her husband is dealing with mental health issues.
Little did anyone suspect that these very insecurities, once a fountain of creativity, would evolve into something far darker down the line. In short, the old Kanye was the embodiment of creative fearlessness. He dared to talk about his doubts, about student loan burdens, and about finding your place in a materialistic society. He inspired a generation of artists to be more introspective, more open, more authentic. For a while, it felt like he was unstoppable, always one step ahead of the crowd, shaping culture and forging new paths, but that wasn't the whole story. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment Kanye began to lose his footing. Some fans argue it started at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards, when he jumped on stage during Taylor Swift's acceptance speech.
Yo, Taylor. I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Others go back even further, noting smaller, overlooked outbursts that hinted at a growing restlessness in his spirit. The common thread is that, with each success, Kanye's desire to remain at the center of conversation seemed to intensify. Maybe it was all part of his grand strategy. After all, staying relevant often means courting controversy. And, for a time, these flare-ups weren't enough to overshadow his music. Albums like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Yeezus still broke boundaries and garnered critical acclaim. Fans who were uncomfortable with some of his statements found themselves torn, unable to fully abandon the man whose artistry kept pushing rap.
I believe that I suffered from exhaustion. I suffered from being lied to constantly by the people around.
And music as a whole, into uncharted territory. Still, those early controversies left a crack in the public's perception of Kanye. It was the first inkling that his craving for attention could outweigh his respect for the platform he'd built. Meanwhile, the media feasted on his antics, and each new instance of questionable behavior seemed to add fuel to the fire. Over time, a growing chorus of fans began asking if these outbursts were merely a PR tactic or signs of deeper internal struggles. As Kanye's star continued to rise, so did the stakes. The fame and recognition that once spurred him toward innovation now seemed to morph into an obsession with keeping his name on everyone's lips.
back door. Well, it seems like Ye wasn't feeling Kendrick's contribution to the project. He says, I don't like Kendrick Lamar's music. He raps very good, but I didn't need to hear him on Carti's album.
No matter what it took, whether staging elaborate fashion shows, igniting social media wars, or publicly lashing out at peers, Kanye appeared determined to remain the focal point of cultural conversation. To many, his music was still worth celebrating, but the tension between his artistry and his attention-seeking persona was unmistakable. From the outside, it almost looked like he was wrestling with himself, the once vulnerable lyricist who sought to uplift people's spirits, battling against an ego that wanted to overshadow everything else. In that struggle, the lines between Kanye's genuine self-expression and his need for constant validation started to blur, but his pursuit of attention was only beginning to escalate when an artist as influential as Kanye sets out to keep the
Kanye West getting candid about the passing of his late mother, Donda, on My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman.
world's gaze fixed on him. The results can be dizzying, and not always in a good way. Perhaps no modern figure has mastered the art of perpetual publicity as well as he has, but there's a dark side to that mastery. Over time, fans observed a pattern. Whenever Kanye felt overshadowed by someone else's success, he'd find a way, anyway, to pull attention back to himself. The shift became noticeable in his relationship with other big-name artists. One minute, he was praising them, extending olive branches or celebrating their achievements. The next, he'd lash out, flipping from admiration to hostility, often without warning. For those who had followed him for years, this felt like a betrayal of the very community spirit Kanye once championed.
Exact medication that
Okay.
they had.
But what did it do to you?
The main thing that it did is it destroyed my confidence.
Even more disturbing, each feud seemed more petty or unprovoked than the last. Then came social media. Twitter and Instagram provided Kanye with a direct platform to the world, where his unfiltered thoughts, outbursts, and sudden mood swings instantly captivated millions. He'd go on long rants, delete everything, then come back with cryptic posts, only to delete those too. Every meltdown became a public spectacle. And for a while, it worked. People couldn't stop watching, and his name consistently trended over social media timelines. Yet, even in these moments of notoriety, there was a nagging sense among fans that something was genuinely amiss. Was he just pulling stunts? Or did he truly need help? Some supporters reasoned that his behavior might stem from mental health struggles, a possibility that complicated the usual cycle of condemnation and defense. After all, if his actions were symptoms of something more serious, then the spectacle turned from entertainment to tragedy. But in Kanye's world, the line between performance and sincerity always seemed blurred. Whether you saw it as marketing genius or alarming self-sabotage, one thing was clear: Kanye's need to occupy center stage was driving him to more extreme tactics. This addiction to validation overshadowed his once untouchable artistry. Yes, people still talked about him non-stop, but increasingly, the conversation shifted from praising his innovation to questioning his stability. Unfortunately, the ripples of this spotlight craving extended far beyond Kanye's own platform. It impacted friends, collaborators, and eventually, a new generation of artists who found themselves either idolized or demonized by one of music's most unpredictable forces. The abrupt turn on Kendrick Lamar stands out as one of the most baffling examples of Kanye's contradictory behavior. Once upon a time, Kanye couldn't say enough good things about the Compton-born lyricist. He praised Kendrick's authenticity, lyrical prowess, and commitment to shedding light on societal issues. Fans saw this camaraderie as a passing of the torch, one creative giant acknowledging another. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, Kanye did what he often does: he flipped the script. When Kendrick's star soared higher, especially around major milestones like the Super Bowl halftime show and multiple Grammy wins,
He posted, can't be the king until they take down the king. Now, we're not sure if he's talking about Kendrick on that last tweet, but some fans seem to be divided on Ye's thoughts about Dot being...
Kanye suddenly took potshots. His social media posts dismissed Kendrick's involvement on high-profile projects, criticized his music for overshadowing everyone else's accomplishments, and implied that Kendrick's presence on certain albums was unnecessary. Naturally, the backlash hit hard. TDE affiliates and fans alike were stunned to see Kanye attack someone he once praised so highly. This wasn't just some playful rivalry, it was a stark 180 that left people scratching their heads. Why tear down an artist whose career path mirrored Kanye's own early struggles for recognition? The answer, some speculated, lay in Kanye's deep-seated insecurity. To him, Kendrick's meteoric rise felt like a threat to his own carefully maintained spotlight. The hip-hop world was evolving, and new voices were capturing the public's imagination, reducing Kanye's cultural clout. This addiction to validation overshadowed his once untouchable artistry. Yes, people still talked about him non-stop, but increasingly, the conversation shifted from praising his innovation to questioning his stability. Unfortunately, the ripples of this spotlight craving extended far beyond Kanye's cultural clout. For an artist whose entire persona thrived on being center stage, that was an unthinkable shift. Of course, this wasn't the first time Kanye had done something similar. Drake fans recalled a similar trajectory: praise, collaboration, and then sudden criticism when Drake's influence became impossible to ignore. While feuds and diss tracks have always been part of hip-hop culture, Kanye's version of beef felt strangely personal and erratic, like a man fighting not just his peers, but his own eroding prominence. But even these explosive fallouts paled in comparison to the controversy he courted next. The alliances he chose, and the ideologies he seemed to embrace, drove many of his long-term fans to a tipping point. If there was a single moment that drew a clear dividing line in the sand, it was Kanye's association with Nick Fuentes, an ultra-controversial figure whose views on race, history, and social issues put him at the fringes of polite discourse. For a musician who once rallied listeners around social injustice and black empowerment, teaming up with someone who openly disrespected entire communities was the ultimate act of hypocrisy. Fans felt betrayed. The very same man who once called out institutional racism on live television, famously stating, "George Bush doesn't care about black people," was now sharing a platform with an individual who dismissed the experiences and equality of black people. Many wondered, was this another desperate grab for attention, or had Kanye truly abandoned the principles that once informed his art? To some, it signaled a point of no return.
Government's had a really cool leader at one time. Love you, love you, love you. There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler.
Critics accused Kanye of exploiting racial discourse all along, shouting about injustice when it served his narrative but jumping ship when it no longer kept him in the limelight. Others pointed out that he seemed entirely disconnected from the consequences of his actions, caring more about staying front-page news than about the harm such alliances could cause. Whatever the motivation, the effect was clear: the trust Kanye had built over decades eroded like never before. It wasn't just a matter of celebrities calling him out or fans debating his tweets. It felt like a moral line had been crossed. Those who tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, attributing his actions to mental health or personal struggle, found themselves grappling with a deeper question: how do you reconcile the artist you once adored with the person he appears to be today? That question became even harder to answer when Kanye's personal life, and his supposed devotion to faith, started colliding with his public persona, creating a tangle of contradictions that no one could ignore. For a while, it looked like Kanye was on the brink of a spiritual revival. He launched his Sunday service gatherings, featuring soulful choir performances that felt both genuine and surreal. Listeners hoped that maybe this was the solution, maybe reconnecting with faith would help stabilize the turmoil that seemed to plague him. And in some ways, it was a compelling narrative, the flawed genius seeking refuge in religion. Yet, just as quickly as he embraced a more pious image, Kanye's actions publicly contradicted the very principles he claimed to stand for. He took aim at his then-wife Kim Kardashian's wardrobe, criticizing her for dressing too provocatively, while simultaneously profiting from hypersexualized imagery in his own brand collaborations. He denounced certain industries as immoral, only to turn around and promote explicit content, products, or websites that many considered just as questionable. The constant flipping made it almost impossible to understand what Kanye truly believed, if anything at all. This same contradiction extended to how he navigated relationships. One moment, he'd talk about family values. The next, he'd be caught up in petty social media wars that dragged family and personal grievances into the spotlight. To outsiders, it felt like he was grandstanding about morality, all while ignoring the messy reality that his life had become. The fans who once admired him for speaking truth to power now saw him stepping on his own message every time it became inconvenient or overshadowed his latest drama. That's what stung most.
But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time.
Kanye once seemed to embody a certain integrity and authenticity that ran through his music and interviews. Now, it looked as if he'd traded that moral compass for any storyline that might keep him trending. If there was any steady principle left, it appeared to be his unyielding dedication to capturing public attention, no matter the cost. As the public wrestled with its disappointment, a new crop of talent rose up in the music scene, bringing their own wave of rebellion and energy. Suddenly, Kanye's old bag of tricks wasn't the main event anymore. Ironically, the very culture Kanye helped shape was now moving in a direction that left him behind. Artists like Travis Scott, Playboi Carti, Ken Carson, and many others began defining the frontier of punk rap or rage music. Their shows exuded a raw, mosh pit energy reminiscent of rock and punk concerts from the 90s and early 2000s. They harnessed the spirit of rebellion that once fueled Kanye's rise but funneled it into an entirely new aesthetic. People who might have been headbanging to rock bands decades ago found themselves flocking to these new age hip-hop performers, who melded rap with a punk ethos. And while Kanye was still making headlines for his outbursts and controversies, younger fans gravitated toward the fresh wave of artistry rather than the drama of a fading icon. The game had changed, and Kanye's spectacle no longer felt as groundbreaking as it once did. In many ways, the shift was natural. Music scenes evolve, and the next generation inevitably takes over. But for someone as used to being the pioneer, stepping aside while others claimed the cultural throne was a hard pill to swallow. Instead of embracing the new movement or collaborating in meaningful ways, Kanye fell back on attention-grabbing tactics, feuds, bizarre partnerships, and inflammatory statements to keep himself relevant. Meanwhile, critics pointed out that these new punk rap artists were dominating awards, selling out shows, and attracting a massive following without needing to rely on the kind of shock value Kanye now employed. The contrast was glaring. While Kanye fought to maintain cultural dominance through scandal after scandal,
Kanye West goes off on a Twitter tirade attacking his wife and his family. And this is just the latest in a series of bizarre outbursts.
These younger artists were pushing boundaries musically, connecting with fans through genuine artistic experimentation. With each passing month, it became more evident that Kanye's tactic of stirring the pot for headlines was less effective in a world saturated by social media drama. People wanted new sounds, new vibes, and a break from the same old controversies. And that shift forced everyone to question how Kanye West's legacy would ultimately be remembered. As the dust settles around Kanye's controversies, we're left asking ourselves, how does someone go from shaping the cultural landscape to risking it all for fleeting attention? It's a question with no easy answer, but it forces us to think about the pressure cooker environment of fame, and what happens when the line between artistic expression and self-destructive chaos becomes blurred. Kanye West still commands a massive audience, and the world hasn't stopped watching. But whether that attention will translate into a triumphant resurgence or mark the final chapter of a once iconic career remains to be seen. We can't predict his next move any more than we can fully understand the forces driving him. At the end of the day, the story of Kanye West is far from over. He may continue to surprise us, both positively and negatively, because if there's one thing he's proven, it's that he's capable of reinvention. The real question is whether the man who redefined hip-hop can